Hello and welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us once again for this next session, now the fifth global call of our digital delegation to the 2026 High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development, or of course, as you all now know, the HLPF or FPAN or FPHN. And this is an exciting moment for us as a group because we are now at our final time of gathering, at least as a whole global group, before the forum itself, the moment we have been waiting for, as we have been preparing since January of this year. So today there will not be a whole lot of new input, just a few final details about how to participate, first of all, in the forum itself, whether you are going to be able to be in New York, where the in-person action is happening, or whether you will be following the proceedings from wherever you may be in the world. Either way, there are ways that you can participate. So we will talk about some of those today. And we will also go over some details about our own shared collective project for the very end of this month, which I hope you will be familiar now to hear is the JCoR SDG Lab. And so we will talk about that series of our own events in response to the forum. We will talk about that today as well. Before we dive into all of those details, I want to first get us situated in a short prayer. Let us pray. God of gladness, God of generosity, you see the difficult work of caring for those who are excluded and suffering. You know the frustration of listening to those who are meant to be our leaders, telling incomplete stories about our communities and ignoring or failing to see the challenges that remain. And yet, you are the one who calls us to be caregivers to each other. You inspire us to serve. You set our hearts aflame with compassion for those who suffer. You choose us to be bearers of your healing love. Strengthen our resolve to seek and speak the truth. Sharpen our minds so that we may speak it clearly and compassionately. Give us glad and generous hearts that we may join with our sisters, our brothers, our colleagues in loving community who support us as we support others in need. Amen. For those of you who are just entering the room, welcome and thank you for joining us. And we've just concluded our opening prayer. And so now we will be proceeding to talk about some of our final details and final preparations for both the HLPF, the forum at the UN, as well as our own response as a JCoR delegation, which we call the JCoR SDG Lab. And so it may feel a little bit backwards, but I'm actually going to talk about the lab first, because it is something we have been preparing for many months now, or at least starting to think about for many months now. And it will also require some thought even before the forum begins. And there is also a form that I have asked you to complete and submit. And I know not everyone has had the opportunity to do that yet. So we are going to take a few minutes while we are together today for those who are ready to complete the form but have not yet had the time. We will do that together today. So, to dive in once again to the details of the JCoR SDG Lab, for reference or reminder, what we call the JCoR SDG Lab is really just a series of webinars or Zoom calls that are very much like this one, the same technology set up, the same format as all of our calls together. And we will have one session each day of the week from the 27th of July to the 31st of July. And one session each day will be dedicated to the 5 priority SDGs for this year's Forum on Sustainable Development. So, as you probably already could recite to me by this time, the 5 goals that are the focus or the priority for this year's forum are goal number 6, which relates to water and sanitation for all. Goal number 7, which relates to clean, affordable, accessible energy for all. Goal number 9, which relates to infrastructure, innovation, and industry. Goal number 11, which relates to sustainable cities and settlements. And that is also a goal that relates specifically to issues of housing, waste management, and public transport. And goal number 17, which relates to all of the large number of different kinds of partnerships that are vital or necessary in order for us to hope to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So we will take those 5 goals in their numerical order throughout our schedule for the week. So beginning on the 27th of July, we will have our session on goal number 6, and then proceed through Friday of that week, July 31st, when we will have a session dedicated to goal number 17. And one other similarity between our calls that we have been having as a group as part of our training and the SDG Lab is the timing. The starting time for all of these sessions, the week of July 27th, will be the same time as all of our training sessions have been. So whatever hour in the day you join this call today, For us in New York, it is 10 o'clock in the morning. But whatever hour it was for you today, that will be the same starting time as each of the sessions of the JCoR SDG Lab. And in terms of what you are asked to do for your participation in these 5 sessions, first of all, you're not necessarily asked to speak in all of them, although if you have an interest in all of them, you certainly are invited to express that interest, and we will see if we can find space for you in each session. But you are asked to participate in at least one session of the lab, so one of the 5 sessions. And the time that is available for you to speak will range between 5 minutes and 15 minutes. And that difference, that range of timing is really just a factor of how many people request to speak during that same session. So if you happen to want to speak on the same day or about the same goal as a large number of our other delegates, then you will each have a shorter time to speak so that we can give an opportunity to all. But if you happen to request to speak on one of the goals, about which there are fewer delegates who wish to speak, then you will have the opportunity to speak for a longer amount of time during the session. And while we are still receiving the forms through which people are expressing their interest and saying which session they want to speak in, so I'm not yet able to tell you exactly how much time each person will have for each session. That is something that I will follow up to communicate to you through email and through our WhatsApp groups after we have received more of the responses to that form. And so what exactly are we asking you to say in that 5 to 15 minutes, whatever it may be? So there are a few different approaches that you can take to how to utilize this time that is available to you. One approach that you might take is to simply offer your own personal observations of how well the goal that we are discussing that day is being implemented in your country. So simply saying, okay, today, the subject is goal number 7 on energy, how well are you seeing electricity, especially clean forms of energy and cooking? How accessible and affordable are those clean forms of energy in your country? Are all communities being reached so that that utility is accessible? So your personal observations. A second approach that you might take to what you would share during those few minutes that you can speak would be to specifically and directly respond to the Voluntary National Review report that has been published by your government. And I will review a little bit later today where you can find those reports if you have not already found and started to read the one that was submitted by your government. And for those of you, if there may be some of you here who your government did not submit a report this year. So, but you are still participating with us. And I can tell you that the process that I will share with you is the same, even if you are looking at a report from last year or the year before, you will find them all in the same place. And you can also offer a critique of a report from a previous year if your government did not publish a report this year. So that's the second option, is to specifically kind of critique that report from government and say, what did I agree with in the report? Where did I find that my own experience or my own observations maybe conflict with what I read in the report? And what was missing from the report? What was absent? Then there's a third option to what you might say while speaking during the SDG Lab, which is to share a good practice, a ministry project from your congregation that is in some way contributing toward the progress or the achievement of the goal we are discussing in your country. So, for example, continuing with goal number 7, if your congregation has been working to train, say, members of the community to construct or to install solar panels, or if you have been promoting the use of clean cooking solutions or movement toward creating more sustainable briquettes for cooking and perhaps away from cutting trees in a way that leads to deforestation. These kinds of projects would all relate to goal number 7. And so those are kinds of projects that you might like to speak about and maybe show some photos or tell a story about impact when we have our lab session on goal number 7. And then, of course, there are those 3 approaches, but you are not required or limited to choosing just one. You are welcome to combine those 3 to have elements of each one in your presentation, in your sharing, if you wish. So again, the 3 kind of main categories of approach to what you might share would be number 1, your observations of how well the goal is being implemented or maybe is not being implemented. The second approach is critiquing the report that was submitted by your government, which would be called the Voluntary National Review. And then the third approach would be presenting a good practice or a ministry project that contributes toward the achievement of the goal. And of course, you can also combine all 3 in any way you like. And so with this reminder of the schedule and which goal we will focus on each day of the lab, I am going to put into the chat box the link to the form through which you can indicate which session you would like to speak in. And you will see in that form that you have the option to select more than one session if you like. And indeed, if you have an interest in more than one goal, I encourage you to select more than one goal in the form, because depending on the number of people that ask to speak on different goals, if there is one day where we have a very large number of speakers and then another on which we have very few speakers, then what we might do is if you select one of the goals where there are fewer speakers, we might invite you to speak on that day, but you will still be free to make comments and speak about all of the goals that are of interest to you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment so that I can get those links into the chat box for you. And I will also remind you there are 4 different links because we created the form in 4 different languages. So they all have the same questions, and you only need to respond to one form. So simply select whichever one is in the language that you prefer and submit that. And I know that some of you may have done this already. So if that is the case for you, please bear with us. Okay, so the links are now in the chat box. So if you have not already submitted this form, I'll ask you to go to the chat box and find the form that is in the language you prefer between English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish. And you can start to complete that if you have not already. And as you are looking at it, if anyone has any questions about the form itself or about the lab, I invite you to ask any questions you have now. And you can do that by raising your hand, which might be your digital hand, or if you have your camera on, you can just raise your actual hand, and I will be happy to clarify any doubts or confusion. I see the hand of Margaret Murilli. Margaret? Thank you for that question, Margaret. So we do give kind of the priority or the first opportunity to speak to those who are coming from countries who have submitted or published a voluntary national review report this year. However, if you are coming from another country that is not reporting this year, but you have been following along in this process with us and you have a contribution that you would like to make, I will invite you to submit the form anyway. And especially because I think we have fewer countries this year that are kind of within our global network as JCoR. So I think there may be more space, more opportunity for those coming from countries not reporting this year to be able to speak during the lab. So I expect that we will be able to give an opportunity to speak to everyone who is interested. However, it is good to give notice in advance that if there is any session that has too many speakers, and we're not able to accommodate everyone, we will give the priority to those who are coming from the countries who are reporting officially to the UN this year. Are there any other questions about the lab itself or about the form? Yes, Anna. Anna, go ahead.
It's almost midday here, and I was thinking if it wouldn't be. Can you hear me well? Can you hear the translation?
Yes, yes, we hear
If
well.
it would be important for us to listen to the efforts, the fights, the struggles of our govern people that govern us and the congregation itself. I'll give you an example. For example, we have invested a lot in the issue of famine, distributing food, all the gestures, solidarity, distribution of land, all the advances that we've made would be important. Also, learning, teaching people how to read and write. We have groups. It's a huge effort that the government is making so that everyone goes to school. So I was wondering if it would be interesting for us to listen to what is already being done with a lot of hope in all our territories. So in this classification, which is here, education doesn't show up, hunger doesn't show up. There are others that might be want to be mentioned, other hopeful issues. We know that we're third world countries and we have all these problems. So thank you very much. That was my idea.
Thank you, Anna. There are a couple questions within the question, but they're both good. So thank you for asking. So the first point is a question of sort of whether we can speak about additional goals, not only, those that are the five that have been selected for this year. And the answer is yes. You are welcome to bring in bits of information or observations that relate to other goals as well. We just ask you to try to connect them in some way to the one that is the focus for the session in which you are speaking. And of course, because they are all quite related, you don't need to, spend too much time making the connection, but you are welcome to speak about any and all goals, although all you probably won't have enough time to speak about all. But if there are one or two that are very dear to your heart, and perhaps they are the focus of your ministry and maybe a priority for your congregation, if you want to find a way to connect those to the goal that we are discussing as the theme for that day, you are very welcome to do that. And the other sort of detail within your question that I want to address is also to I know that when we speak about promoting justice and peace, when we think of analyzing reports from governments, it may be that our first instinct is, okay, so you want us to say everything that's wrong with the report, or you want us to talk about all of the problems that we are still facing. And that is one part of it. That is one part of what we are invited to comment on. But as you rightly said, you're also very encouraged and welcome to talk about what is going well. You're very welcome to talk about progress that you have seen. You're very welcome to give positive feedback about the report from government or the action of government as you have seen it. So it's really just the truth, the good, the bad, the somewhere in between. That is what you are invited to present. So please, just be as open and honest and straightforward as you can. Whether what you have to say is wonderful and worthy of celebration, or whether what you have to say is more challenging, or most likely it is some combination of the two, because all of our nations are, I think, in some ways making progress. In some ways, we are still struggling. We are still challenged. I often say, I think every country on earth is still a developing country, if we are honest with ourselves. So we're welcome to just present that whole complex reality as we experience it, good and bad. Thank you for that question, Anna Elena. Are there other questions about the lab or about the form? Okay, well, since I have been talking the whole time while you had access to the form, I'm going to take about 5 minutes, just total quiet and peace for you. If you are still looking at the form, still completing the form, I will give you some peace and quiet to complete that. Um, Although I do see one more question before the 5 minutes. So, Margaret, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to come back again. I see on the form, it needs us to fill in the country. My country is Kenya, but it's not on. So if I try to submit and I've not chosen any country, it is not going through. Thanks.
Yes, that is true. Let me add that one now. And is there anyone else here that has that same problem that they would like a country added to the list? Okay, there are now, so on the English form, there are now a few additional countries that are not reporting this year. Based on requests, I have added Australia, Canada, and Kenya. So if you refresh the form, if you open it again, you will find you will find Kenya listed there, Margaret. Okay, I will now give you your 5 minutes of peace and quiet. And then if anyone has any problems or questions, you can let me know. Otherwise, you have a 5-minute break. Hey, did any additional questions arise in the last few minutes? Or is everyone clear and comfortable with the form? Okay, not seeing any questions or hands. So we will move on. So now that we've talked about the substance of what you will say and when, on which session you would like to say it, I want to go over a few more of the technical details of how to participate in the lab. So one important key detail to remind everyone of is that for each session of the lab, you will need to register separately. And while you may only be speaking during one of the sessions, I would also invite and encourage you to attend as many of them as you can. I know that it may not be possible to attend all of them. It's quite a full week if you do attend all of them. But if you are available, it is wonderful to join sessions in which you are not speaking and to hear and to learn from the other delegates in this group. And for each session, we will have all of the same interpretation that we offered during our training program this year. So we will have, again, audio and interpretation in English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. We will also be recording our events and sharing them on our YouTube channel for JCoR after they are all finished. And we do make these sessions open to the public, which is to say they are open to more than just our group of delegates. So you are also welcome and encouraged to invite as many members of your congregation or partners with whom you are working, your friends, whoever you might like to invite, who you think may be interested, all are welcome to join the sessions. And as I say that, I want to again acknowledge that if anyone has a concern about your security, if there are certain things that you might want to say or critiques that you might want to present, but you feel that there may be some type of danger or security risk involved with having your name or your face out there in public on a recording in connection with those observations, we can make a plan ahead of time to ensure that we either turn off your camera and change the way that your name appears on the screen while you're speaking. Or if your concern is greater than that and that you do not even want your section of the lab session published at all, we can also pause or edit out that part of the recording if you feel that there is some serious risk or danger to having your sharing, your speaking published on YouTube. And we also have a series of pointers or guidelines for how to kind of stay on track, on schedule, as you prepare for the lab, and then kind of the technical aspects of how to set yourself up well, technology-wise, in order to participate on the day that you will speak. So there are first steps I want to review, and these are things to do several days before the lab session in which you will speak. So the first important point is you are welcome to provide video or images or presentation slides if you wish to share those while you are speaking. That being said, you are not required to include video or images or presentation slides. So that is merely optional. But if you do want to use any of those kind of visual materials to accompany your presentation, then we do ask you to send those to us, to me, 3 days or more before the session in which you will speak. So if you have it ready further in advance, you're welcome to send it anytime, but please send it no fewer than 3 days before the session in which you will speak. And then for everyone, if you are not using slides, or if you are using images but not really including written text in your visuals, then we do ask you to send at least a little something in writing about your presentation in advance of the session. This could be kind of some written out the main points or the notes that you might use when you're presenting. And it doesn't need to be the exact words you will speak. It doesn't need to be, a word for word script, but at least an outline or notes that capture the key points, the key ideas of what you want to share. And the reason that we ask for that is that it's very helpful when we are, in some cases, featuring maybe 4 or 5 different presentations in one session. And many of you will want to include as much information into your assigned number of minutes as possible. And so we want to ensure that we have clear notes ahead of time so that our wonderful team of interpreters can get a look at what you intend to say before the session, and that will help them to more perfectly communicate what you are sharing in other languages to those who are listening in other languages. So it's very important for the sake of our interpretation and for those who might like to hear you in a language other than the one you will be speaking, that you please send some kind of written outline or notes at least 3 days before the session in which you will speak. And then the next point has to do with those who may have some concerns about the stability of your internet, of how strong your internet connection is. Or perhaps if you know that you don't have reliable access to electricity where you are, then one way that we might try to sort of prepare to be sure that your sharing can still happen during the session would be that you could record yourself, make a simple video, which you could do on your phone or your computer, whatever you have and whatever you are comfortable with. But just a simple recording of yourself sharing your comments and then sending that video to me. Again, 3 days before would be best. so that we will have that video. And if for any reason you're not able to connect to the Zoom call on the day of your session, at least we will have your video as a backup, and we will still be able to learn from you and to receive your comments and your insights. And then the next set of points are really things to do on the day of the lab itself. So everything I said thus far is all about preparation for more than 3 days before the event. But then on the day of the event in which you will speak, please plan to join the session about 15 minutes before the actual scheduled start time, as that will help us to make sure that everyone who is going to speak that day is ready, that you have managed to connect to the call, and if anyone is not connected, that will allow me to try to retrieve the video that they have submitted if they have submitted one, and those kinds of getting everyone kind of situated and comfortable on the day of the session. So 15 minutes ahead, please plan to be on the Zoom call. And one other thing to think about for the day of the session is that it is always easiest to see you, assuming you have your camera on. It's always easiest to see you if you are seated in a place where there is light coming onto your face rather than light coming from behind you. I'm sure you have all been on calls where you have seen this too. If the light is coming from behind a person, then even if their camera is on, you tend to just see something of a silhouette and not really their face. So obviously, we can survive if the lighting is not ideal, but if you do have a place where you can have a strong internet connection and quiet, and you are able to get light in front of you, that is ideal. So you can just think about that and think about whether you have a space where that kind of light might be possible. And one other detail too is that sometimes it's also helpful to play around with the height of your phone or your computer and adjust it slightly so that we can see your whole face and see it maybe at eye level or even slightly higher. That tends to be the best way to see the person who is speaking. Another point to consider in preparing your setup, your technology setup for the day of the lab, is that it does tend to be easier, especially if you are speaking during the session. It does tend to be easier to use a computer to connect to the Zoom room rather than a phone. And we know that not everyone has access to a computer, and that is okay. Whatever device you have been using to connect to these calls will also work on the day of the lab sessions. But if you do happen to have access to a computer, you might try to use that on the day of the session in which you will speak. Another important request is if you have access to a set of headphones or a headset that has a microphone, that would be the best way to ensure that your audio, meaning your voice, is very clear, is coming through very clear when you are speaking. And that will also be very helpful to our interpreters to help ensure that they can hear you clearly and then that they can relay the information that you are sharing clearly to everyone else on the call. So it's not 100% necessary if you do not have access to that kind of headset. That is okay. Do not panic. But if you do have access to one, whether your own or one you can borrow from someone else, that is a helpful tool that will help to make your audio clearer for the session. And of course, this will be old news to all of you since you have been doing this probably for years. But just to remember that when you join the Zoom room, be sure to join the audio channel for your preferred language in the same way that you always do on these calls and probably many other calls. And if your internet connection is strong enough, we do ask you to try to have your camera on when you're speaking, as that creates a much more personal connection, and a better experience for those who are attending the session to have a sense of who it is that is speaking to them. And especially if they are listening to you through an interpreter, then they are not even hearing your voice. So at least if they can have your face to pair with the information that you are sharing, it does allow them to have some kind of connection to you. And I know that it may be the case that perhaps your internet is not strong enough, and so turning off the camera often helps to improve the audio connection. So that is the most important thing, that we hear you clearly. But if you do have strong internet, please do plan to have your camera on so that we can see your beautiful face and feel more connected to you while you are speaking. And of course, as usual, this is true for any Zoom call, of course, but remember to keep your own microphone muted when you are not the one who is speaking. And this is the final point, but it is certainly not the least important, is that as a speaker, please do your best to remember that when you are presenting, there will be 3 people who are interpreting all of your words into other languages. And so, in order to optimize the quality of that interpretation, we ask you to do your best to remember to speak slowly and also to speak as clearly as you possibly can. And that will help ensure a high degree of fidelity or faithfulness in the translation to other languages. All right, I want to pause there and ask if there are any questions about all of those little tips and pieces of guidance for preparing for your session and submitting your materials ahead of time and getting yourself set up with technology on the day you will speak. I do see the question in the chat box from Ana Elena. And I'll answer that now while perhaps others may be thinking about whether they have a question. So Anna has asked, how do we know which day we are ultimately scheduled to speak? You know, because you're submitting your preferences, and maybe some of you are saying, oh, I could speak on any one of these 3 days. So how will you know on which one you are actually assigned or scheduled to speak. So once I have received more of the responses from the group, which will be within the next week, no later than that, I will assess how many people have asked to speak on each day, and I will work out the final schedule. So I will have a complete list of who will speak on each day, and I will send that to all of you by both email and by WhatsApp group. So whichever platform you tend to see more frequently, I will share it there, so that everyone will be clear about, okay, I am assigned to speak on Wednesday about goal number 9, or I am assigned to speak Friday about, which is the theme of goal 17. But once again, I do want to emphasize that even if you said, oh, I would like to speak about goal number 6 and 17, even if you are assigned, I use that word as gently as possible because I hope that you welcome any assignment, and not feel forced. But even if you are asked to speak on the Friday about goal 17, you can also speak about the other goals that are of interest to you on any day that you are given to speak. So we try to keep to our themes as much as possible, but we understand that you all work on more than one goal, you are interested in more than one goal, and of course, the goals are all very interrelated and interconnected. So there's no need to worry about, crossing into the territory of the goal that is not the theme for today. That kind of connecting or linking is very welcome. Are there any more questions about guidance or the schedule for preparing, sending in materials, getting yourself set up to speak? Okay, then we will proceed, going back a little bit in time, to something that is happening right now, which is that your governments have now submitted and published their reports from their own voluntary national reviews. And so you have seen this before if you were on our last couple of calls, but just to remind you that there is a VNR database, a database of voluntary national review reports. And it looks like this. And as you can see, I have included the link that will take you directly to only those countries who are reporting this year, 2026. However, if you want to see countries that are not reporting this year, but have reported in past years, you can simply toggle or change the year listed in this little box right here by clicking on that downward pointing caret or arrow, and changing the year to a specific other year or to all. You can just see all the countries at once. And then all you need to do is scroll down to find the name and flag of your own country and click on that. And just for an example, I've opened here the page for the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And I do warn you all, if you have not already been to these pages, that unfortunately, the United Nations has not provided an official translation of this whole database. So all of the kind of headings and titles in it, they are all in English, but hopefully you have your internet browser set up so that it will at least automatically translate to whatever language you prefer. But I am sorry to say that the UN website itself only exists in English. But this looks the same on every page regardless. So even if you're not really reading the words in the language you prefer, you will be able to find it if your report if you follow these steps. So once you've opened the page for your country, you will see kind of a list of all of the reports that they have submitted in the past. And if your government is reporting this year, then at the very top, you will see Voluntary National Reviews 2026. And as you can see, the past years are listed underneath that. So they have the most recent one on top. So it will be at the very top, Voluntary National Reviews 2026, and you'll just click right on that heading. And that will take you to a page that looks like this, where you will see a very, very brief summary of kind of what they call the main messages or the main ideas appearing here. But then the more interesting part that I want to call your attention to and invite you to read and study is something that will be linked in two different parts of the page under these little boxes where it says documents. There will be one along the right side here, and there will be another along the bottom. And these are the same set of links in both places. So it doesn't matter which one you click on, they'll be the same, but you can look for a link that says something like VNR 2026 report. And there may be slightly different names for that link. It might, for example, actually say ENV if it's in another language, or RNV. But it will say something to the effect of 2026 report. And that's the one you want to click on in order to open the full length report from your government. And again, we do not expect that you will necessarily read the entirety of the report that was published by your government. They may actually be very long. Some of them are, I think, more than 200 pages long. But what you might do is look to see, first of all, if there is some kind of brief executive summary at the very beginning of the report. You might be interested in reading that. And then you might look for the table of contents to find that most reports are organized according to different goals, to different SDGs. So you look for the one or two that are your area of focus, and then maybe go directly to those sections of the report and look at those. So try not to be overwhelmed if the report published by your country is very long. Don't worry. Just look for the sections that will be most relevant to you and put your time and energy there. And again, our three big reflection questions that we use all over and over again are to ask yourself as you're reading the report, where does your own experience agree or align with the report? Are there any places that your own experience is in conflict or tension with the report? And is there anything that is missing or absent from the report? What additional insights or recommendations would you contribute to the report if someone had asked you while they were writing it. Just those questions to keep in mind to guide your reflection. Are there any questions about how to find the report from your government? Or has anyone had any difficulty or problem doing that? Okay. I do see a different question there from Prakash about asking who is the audience and what is the final purpose. And Prakash, could you clarify for me, are you asking who is the audience for the report published by the government, or who is the audience for our SDG Lab presentations? Okay, great. Thanks. So for the SDG Lab presentations, the most immediate audience is our own global community of religious and their partners, so that we can learn from one another's critiques and insights and good practices. Um, and we also hope that especially those who are working in ministry in settings like the United Nations in New York, or those at the UN in Geneva or Nairobi, that we will also be able to glean some information from what you share that may ultimately be something we can integrate into written statements that we would submit to a UN conference or commission or negotiation, or something we could bring to a meeting that we might have with representatives of government. Additionally, it also might be useful to those who are simply working in a ministry that's also at the grassroots and maybe in a similar context, another country within your region, or it could be a country in a completely different region, but who learns something from your observation. Maybe they actually see a similar challenge or a pattern of behavior in their own country, in their own context, or they see something beneficial from a good practice that you share that may also be viable in the context, the community where they are in ministry. So there are a few different kind of ultimate purposes or applications. Some are for advocacy at the international level and bringing ideas directly to governments. And the other is learning from one another about creative or beneficial ways that we can contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. And that includes, I think, two different aspects of when we share good practices with one another. There's the practical element of, learning the technical details of, oh, okay, so you had this problem and you designed this project and it included these parts. And that's something that someone may be able to directly bring into designing their own project. But the other broader effect that I find that we have each time we have done this series of the JCoR SDG Lab is we are always re-energized and encouraged to hear about the wide variety of different ministries and different contributions that religious are making to achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I find that of those that I have the chance to interact with after the labs, I always find that people do take away a sense of inspiration and new energy to bring into their ministry, and to continue feeling a stronger sense of community as well, feeling more connected both in the challenges and in the solutions to their global community of religious. So it's a manifold purpose, I would say. But the immediate audience to plan for would be speaking to your fellow sisters, brothers, lay partners in mission. Use that kind of language, speak with that audience in mind, and to the extent possible, I know that those of us who are based in a United Nations setting will also be trying to learn from what you share to see how we can channel that into the way that we promote justice and peace in our interactions with governments. Does that clarify the question for you? Great. Yeah, you don't need to feel like you're going into a government meeting. Oh, yes. Yes, that's right. A friendly audience. Okay, I see no questions or hands with regard to finding government reports. So oh, sorry, go ahead. Okay, let's just go ahead and take a look at that because it's probably an issue others have encountered too. So I'm just going to go ahead and open that. Make it a little bigger so we can see. Okay, so because Canada is not creating a new report for this year, I'm going to go backward. I just changed the year that we were searching on the side. Guess it was 2024 that they presented last. I thought it was. Okay, let me just look at all of them. Okay, so here's Canada. Okay, so it looks like they're planning to present next year. So there won't be anything there right now because they will not be required to submit anything until about 11 months from now. So the next thing you can do is to look to the most recent report, which is from 2023. So by clicking on that, that will take you to a page like the one I was sharing before. And then over on this section that has all of the document links, you can look for the report itself. So here you can find they have published it in English and in French. So you can select whichever version you prefer to read, and then go from there. But that's anyway, the reason that you saw only a letter is because that is for next year. And so at this stage in the process, they're not yet required to have published that report. They have only to state their intention to present it next year. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now, in some ways, we can say that this is the main event, is to look at how to follow the proceedings of the HLPF itself. And so for that purpose, I want to give thanks to my associate global coordinator, Katie, who some of you may know from other programs, because Katie has produced once again our annual written guide to the HLPF. And so I will be showing you a few of the key pages from that guide, but there is more to it, which is available on the JCoR website. And the link is right here in the slides, and I will also put it into the chat box for you so you can open it right away before you leave this call. And it is available in the same four languages in which we have interpretation for this program. So here are a few key sections of the guide that provide everything you need to know about how to follow the proceedings of the forum. So that includes the dates, 7 to 15 July. There is a link that will take you to UN Web TV, which is the big website of the UN itself, where they will live stream most of the proceedings of the forum. Particularly, they will have all of the sessions in which the governments will be presenting their voluntary national reviews. And they will also have a number of different panel discussions that are dedicated to those same 5 priority goals of the SDGs. So there's a brief summary of the overall program of the forum, but there are also links here that will take you to the different schedules of events that are included in the forum. And it's important to note that there are kind of 3 different schedules that are all part of the forum. So one is the main program, which is everything that is happening kind of in the main meeting room inside the United Nations. And so that for that, you go to this HLPF program webpage. But then there is another schedule of something called side events. And those are events that are also happening somewhere inside the UN building, but they are not the main program. They are kind of organized independently, usually by at least one government, and they may be partnering with some organizations from civil society. So those are the side events. And then there's something called the off-site and virtual events, this link here. And these are events that are happening either in some smaller space outside the UN, but still in New York, as well as a great number of events that are happening fully virtually, fully online. And so that schedule, this one here with virtual events, will be maybe the most important or second most important for those of you who are following the proceedings virtually, if you're not able to come to New York, then this will be a very important link to follow so that you can see all of the virtual events that are available to you. But apart from that, you will definitely want to have the link to UN Web TV to see, particularly when your own government is making a presentation. And then there is also a schedule of something called special events. You may find that there is a topic there that is very interesting to you, so you might want to attend one of those as well. But I want to especially call your attention to this link to see your government presentation and this link to see virtual events that are sponsored by civil society, which will include several events that are sponsored by members of JCoR, meaning different congregations who are part of JCoR, as well as other working groups that those congregations are a part of. And here is the full schedule of those reports from governments. So this shows you which date and which time you can expect your own government to be presenting their voluntary national review. So if your government is reporting this year, this page is very useful to be able to see when and where that presentation will be happening. And the links on this page will also take you directly to the page in that database that I was just sharing that has all of the VNR reports. This link where you see your country's name will take you directly to your country's page. So that is another quick way for you to look up the report from your government. And we also included in that guide the schedule and all of the registration links for our 5 sessions of the SDG Lab. So that's something that you can use to easily share with anyone who you want to invite to join the SDG Lab. You can share the whole guide, or you can share just this page of the guide with them to invite them to join us. And then there is also a page that will take you to a part of the JCoR website where we have shared our specific recommended events, because you will have a very large number of events to choose from, whether you are in New York or following the conference virtually. And so to offer a little bit of a starting place for you to help you select at least a few events to attend. And I want to quickly jump to that page on our website so that you can see what it looks like. So here are our recommended events. And as you scroll down, you can see the title, the date, the time. If they are happening virtually, you will find a registration link. We include flyers if they are available, a description of the event, the names of all of the organizations who are sponsoring, and we always put in bold the members of JCoR who are involved. So this is a good page to explore if you are overwhelmed by the large number of events that are happening on those different schedule pages. You might want to begin here on this page so that you can have at least a few events that you want to try to attend, and then you can start to explore other options after that. Let me putting into the chat box now the page where you can find this guide. So if you want to open the guide now, you can get that link from the chat box. And you will see the guide is right at the top of that page, and you can select whether you want to open it in English, Spanish, Portuguese, or French. And one other page I want to highlight from the guide is that we have offered specific guidance about social media accounts that you might like to follow. If you are a person who engages with social media, we have provided different links or handles for Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky. These are accounts that would be useful for you to follow during the forum if you want to get updates or even to interact a little bit with some of the main organizers of the forum. And of course, we also put the JCoR social media details at the top because you are also welcome to interact with us. And in the bottom corner here, we also have hashtags you can use if you want to connect your messages on social media with others who are also following this forum. But if you're not a person who uses social media, then don't worry about this page. You are not obligated to start interacting on social media at all. And as I mentioned, there are quite a few more pages to that guide. We do try to design them so that even those who have not been following this program since January are still able to learn just enough to start to follow and interact with the forum. So there are quite a few more pages in there that explain the very basic background of what the forum is, some of the key terms that a person will need to know to understand the conversation. And then we have a little description of each of the SDGs that are the focus for this year's forum. So there's a good bit more background information in the guide, but I didn't bother highlighting that in our session with you today because that is something that you already learned in our previous sessions. But I hope that guide is something that you will not only find useful for yourselves, but that you will also share with other members of your congregations or other members of your network more broadly, as we hope that guide will help facilitate the engagement of as many people of goodwill as possible in this forum. Are there any questions about the guide?
No questions, but just another comment of thank you so much for it and all the work you and Katie put into that. That is wonderful and just offers so much to the network that we'll share it with our networks. So thank you.
I will pass that along to Katie because I personally really cannot take credit for the guide. She does all of the design and the information gathering, which is quite an effort. But she works very hard at it, so we hope you do find it very useful. All right. So then we will proceed just to a recap of what the next steps are to be taken between now and our kind of debriefing global call, which will be in the first week of August. So first, please be on the lookout. Please be watching your email boxes for an email from me and sent to you and other delegates in your global region, as we will be inviting you to join a second round of regional calls. And we have adjusted the timeline a little for this because we realized it might be more helpful or more strategic to have these calls just after the proceedings of the forum conclude, because by that time you will all have been able to hear the presentations of your governments during the forum itself. And so you will have time to kind of exchange your reactions to those presentations with other members from your region. And this is a good opportunity not only to kind of exchange reactions, but also maybe to organize your thoughts before you share your critiques or reflections in the context of the JCoR SDG Lab. So we will be aiming to have those calls basically from the first day after the forum until just before the SDG labs start. So that will be from the 16th to the 24th of July. We'll have one call for each global region. So watch your mailbox for an invitation to help find the best date and time for those in your region, and we will schedule it from there. And of course, you will want to, before that call, read at least some part of the Voluntary National Review report from your government and listen to their brief presentation during the forum itself, which I should add, if you are not available to watch your government presentation live whenever it is scheduled to happen, they do keep recordings on UN Web TV of all of those presentations. So if you're not free at the exact date and time that your government is making its presentation, you can still watch it afterward. They are usually available later, even in the same day, if not the next day. So you will have a chance to hear what your government has to say in the room, in the forum, which will be good material for your reflection and your discussion with other delegates from your region. And of course, as I said before, you are welcome and encouraged to both review and share the JCoR guide to the HLPF, to register for as many sessions of the JCoR SDG Lab as you can, and to prepare your own contribution to the SDG Lab, including notes and any visual materials that you might like to use. And please remember that you are asked to submit those at least 3 days before the session in which you will speak. And of course, once again, I will send you the final schedule of who speaks on which day. I will send that to you within the week. So you will know exactly what your due date or your deadline is for submitting those notes or visuals. And then, of course, simply attend as much of the HLPF program as you are able. And we understand you have another life, you have ministries, you have responsibilities with your congregation. So we don't expect that you can drop everything for a week or more to follow everything in the HLPF, but please do what you can to follow at least the governments and the issues that are of greatest interest to you. And when you cannot watch things live as they are happening, do explore the possibility of recordings afterward. And finally, I do want to remind us that we do have one more global call for our delegates, just like this one, which will be our opportunity to kind of reflect and debrief the entire journey from January through July. And that call will be on the 7th of August at the same time as today, our usual meeting time. And I have included a link to register for that call as well. Are there any final questions before we close for today? Okay. Then I will give you one final word of thanks and appreciation for your time and your attention. And I look forward to communicating with you quite a bit throughout this month. And I will try to do that on both email and WhatsApp to make sure that everyone is connected, beginning with sharing both the slides from today, the recording from today, and the final schedule of speakers for our SDG Lab. And if you have any questions or difficulties as you are attempting to follow the forum virtually, if you have any difficulty or question as you are preparing your contribution to the SDG Lab, please send me a message and I will do my best to respond and help you navigate whatever the challenge may be. Thank you again. Thanks to our interpreters, Anna, Gabriella, and Vivian. And I look forward to seeing more of all of you this month. Be well and have a very good remainder of your day or your night.